How do we create nostalgia in music? I found out that by combining specific formulas and musical characteristics together, we can actually engineer nostalgia into music. However, it's only going to take us so far because, in fact, nostalgia is quite complex and it's not that simple. This topic has been on my mind a lot recently because I've been writing music for a short film called The Other Side, and nostalgia is a huge theme.
Nostalgic, comforting, but also lonely at the same time. Reflective, but also like content.
So as I was preparing to write music for this film, I took some time to analyze different tracks I've loved over the years that have this nostalgic undertone. And I definitely noticed some recurring patterns and common musical themes. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 of the techniques that I found to be the most effective for achieving this type of sound and emotional quality. To see them in practice, we're going to take Mary Had a Little Lamb and try to make it sound as nostalgic as possible by applying these techniques. To start, we're going to drop the tempo. Even though it sounds obvious, this is necessary in order to create a mellow pace. I'm currently using a falling bass line in the left hand, which is an effective place to start. In order to explore different harmonies, let's switch that up, starting first with a classic 2-5-1 progression. What really helps to soften the harmony in this case is to use lush chords that have more extensions. So instead of just using 3-note triads, we're using 7th chords, which have 4 pitches, or 9th chords, which have 5. Another classic one is the 4-5-3-6 chord progression. You find this a lot in a lot of J-pop, anime, Studio Ghibli tracks. Here's another example with a turnaround style chord progression, and instead of choosing A minor, let's go with C minor for this one. The circle of fifths pattern in the left hand adds this beautiful flow to this music, and this particular example really reminds me of a lot of the music you hear in K-dramas. The next technique is to add melodic notes that come in early. Or you could also call it anticipatory melodic notes. They're going to be melodic notes that come right before the beat. So instead of aligning all of the melody notes with the left hand, some notes will be moved slightly earlier. So within this context and this flavor of nostalgic music, I think these formulas work because they are combining elements of the past and contemporary popish elements as well. And this creates something that is quite like the emotions tied to nostalgia. You're looking back, but you're also present right now. And there's a sweetness to it. There's not too much heaviness. And I think getting that balance is key when applying these to your music. Now, if you want a prime example of a lot of these concepts, you can find it in One Summer Day from Spirited Away. It's written by Joe Hisaishi. I've analyzed this before in my video about Studio Ghibli music. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. So something that I think Mary Had a Little Lamb does not have, which will be very effective, is to have a little bit of a leap. Something that comes to mind is Ennio Morricone's Cinema Paradiso. So these leaps always striving upwards. Okay, so Mary Had a Little Lamb is definitely coming along, but I think we can add a few more things, especially with production. I want to add some strings, and since I don't have an orchestra, I'm going to rely on MIDI strings. I put some ideas down in the DAW, and what I'm going to do is send this off to my friend Cameron, who's going to help me make this sound extra special and magical. So let's see what he has to say with it when he gets back to us.
So when we're trying to create nostalgia with music, in addition to the composition and orchestration choices, equally as important is the production and the mix of the piece. So the preference is always to work with live players, but if we're using virtual instruments, it is extremely important to draw as much life and emotion out of them as possible, really being intentional and detailed with the automation of the expression and dynamics, and choosing the right libraries that complement the piece and the emotion we're after, and to blend all of those together through mixing techniques like reverb and EQ to put everything in the same space and to create a recording that feels alive and genuine and true to the piece and the emotions.
So now, with these techniques combined, let's listen to Mary Had a Little Lamb, nostalgified. So as you can hear, these techniques really work. I would say that this is a pretty nostalgic sounding Mary Had a Little Lamb. So of course there are many different types of nostalgia in music, and this is only one sliver of an example, but you do get the point. Earlier on, I mentioned that these formulas only take you so far, and part of the reason why I said that was because when I was writing music for this short film, I was applying these techniques to the themes that I had, and I ended up scratching all of them because in the end, yes, the music sounded nostalgic, bittersweet, all of this, but it didn't really carry. Eric, the director of the film, he rejected all of the ones that were formulated in this way, and he ended up choosing the ones where I scrapped everything and just started from scratch, and I wasn't thinking of any of these chord progressions or formulas, tips and tricks, and I was concentrating on the storyline, and I was pulling from my own memories of, different life experiences that have similarities to the storyline of the short film. What really helped me was to get away from the piano and the studio and to connect directly with the inspiration to the film. The story takes place in Oakland, California, where Eric is also from, and so he has personal and nostalgic connections to many of these sites. Spending time in this area with Eric and the rest of the team helped me tap into the emotional core of the story. What I'm learning from all of this is that these techniques based on music theory and various skills are great to have as tools in the toolbox, but won't necessarily take you all the way to where you want to go emotionally. For that, I don't think there necessarily is a formula. A very special thank you to Rizona for providing me with this beautiful piano on loan. Thank you to Cameron Adams. Thank you to my patrons on Patreon, and for you all for watching and subscribing. See you soon in the next video.